Welcome to the BumbleKast. I'm sick, and this is Kyle.
Oh, man.
Welcome to the BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as always is the highest spec co-host you could ever hope to get on the market, Kyle JCRB Krause.
I don't know how true that is. I feel like I'm like mid-range at best. But hey, you know what? The mid-range is the sweet spot, so it's all good. It's all good.
You're functional, you're dependable, you're affordable. I don't know where I'm going with this.
I guess. Am I affordable? That's awkward, but whatever. Sure.
Sorry, ladies. He's already taken.
We'll go with that. I mean, if you want to hire me to do, like, your podcast for you, sure. Talk to me. But anyway, how are you doing, Ian?
I'm sick with, like, the most limp-wristed, passive-aggressive flu ever. Like,
what's funny is you don't really sound that sick. Like, your voice isn't like, you don't sound like you're congested or have a whole lot of snot going on necessarily.
That's the thing. I'm just snotty enough that I need a tissue, but I'm not, like, congested.
Yeah.
I'm really fatigued, but I have enough energy to do stuff. I don't feel good, but I don't feel bad. It's like, I'm going to make you feel a little crappy, but I'm not going to actually make you sick. And blue, 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 blue. Just make me sick already. I've been throwing chicken noodle soup and vitamin C at you. Just be done with it. You know, either be sick or be well. Just none of this middling crap.
Yeah. That's annoying. That's really obnoxious. Me, I'm just tired. Which I'm sure some people could relate. And I don't know why I'm tired exactly, because it's not like I've really done much. But, you know. So it's just a thing, Ian. It's just a thing. So.
The anthem of our generation. I'm tired. I'm not really sure why, but I'm tired.
Pretty much. So how's Drogoon going?
Drogoon had a fantastic start. If you missed out, we had an episode, last episode.
Yes.
We had Adam Bryce Thomas, and we talked up the comic before launch. It's a brand new series by me and Adam. We've already got over 200 followers on Twitter. We have a handful of patrons already. The launch went without a hitch. Next update will be on Friday. So when you're listening to this, either you've missed a page or you get to look forward to a page.
Indeed.
But, yeah, it's a great start. It's had very warm reception. A piece of fan art already, for goodness sakes.
Cool.
So, if we get more of that, we're going to be building up a fan art page. So, please, if you read it and you are inspired, send it our way. We would love to see it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. I read the first 5 pages. It's a good start. We've got some... I'm intrigued to learn more. So
I'm so glad. The start is, we talked about it a little bit on the episode, but the start is so very hard to do, because, like, where do you start?
It really is, yeah.
You don't want to start too bombastic, because then it's like, okay, all this action means nothing to the reader. But you don't want to start too slow, because then they're like, this is boring, get to the point.
Right.
So,
and you're throwing around a little bit of the terminology of the world, but it's not so difficult to follow that it's impossible or anything. No, it's a good start. It's intriguing. It draws you in and wonder what they're talking about exactly, which I'm sure we'll find out very soon.
That, and we made sure to end on a page where it's like, oh, Foreign hears something. What is the thing that he hears? You'll just have to come back next week.
Ho!
Crafty devils that we are.
Yes. So
what about KNGI? How is that show running, sir? You're coming up on an anniversary episode soon, aren't you?
I am about 20 episodes away from 400 episodes.
Good night.
Yeah, pretty wild. That's just 400 episodes of Nitro Game Injection. I have another 120-odd-ish episodes of the other show I did for a while, which is pretty much the same. It just was a weird branding split that I did for a little while, and so I'm technically already over 400 episodes. I'm almost... Actually, it would be my 500th episode, technically. My last one would have been. Kind of.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah. Pretty wild there. So, I'm having a good time with it. Doing stuff with the patrons, because I have my own Patreon for that going on. So, I do a poll every month, and just recently I did the episode that they chose, which was... video game music remixers and musicians who live in Arizona. So that was a lot of fun for me because I'm from Arizona. So I got to kind of pay homage to my hometown heroes. So that was a lot of fun.
It would be really cool if you parsed out the numbers and your 400th episode would also be your 500th episode. So you could have some kind of like crazy fusion 900th episode celebration. And I'm thinking too hard about this.
I think so. But that's okay. Plus, I got another 104 episodes of this show. So, I mean, if you want to count that, I guess you could count half of it because, it's 2 of them. So you just half it. I don't know. It's the only thing I could think of. So, also, is this our 2-year anniversary, or not our 2-year anniversary, or like 4-year, 5-year anniversary? Because this is the 104th episode, and there are 52 weeks in a year. So we started the show in like what, October 2015?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of fudged how we were counting the seasons out, but this would be, I guess,
I think this
5 years of BumbleKast.
I think this is near our anniversary episode. So happy anniversary to us. Yay. Happy anniversary, BumbleKast.
We should have done something special. Oh, well.
We did. We talked about Dragoon. That's special.
But we should have done something about BumbleKast.
Whatever. It's fine. Let's do a show about the show. That would have been awkward. Inception. Anyway.
Bumble meta.
Yeah. We heard you like a BumbleKast, so we put a BumbleKast in your BumbleKast so you can BumbleKast while you BumbleKast. All right. Have we had enough fun? Is it time to still have fun because the show's fun?
Yeah, let's talk about some other fun things. Specifically, today we're talking about PC gaming, which is more your realm than mine.
Yes, indeed. Give us like a brief history of your experiences with PC gaming. I know you have a little, but
I was thinking about that and just how broad you want to classify that, because I played a little bit of Warcraft 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. I played TIE Fighter on my dad's machine way back in the day. There was like the original roguelike, which I think was called Rogue. I remember playing on my dad's what was it, Apple II or something?
Yeah, would have been around that time, yeah.
Way back in the day. I did Team Fortress 2 for a bit until it started getting too hat-oriented, and I just ran out of time and functioning machines. Now, a little bit of things here and there, nothing too seriously, but there was another thing, and I guess this counts because it was a gaming experience, and it was on the computer way back in the day, on like middle and high school. I played these role-playing games through Telnet,
right?
Which is, for you young folks, a very early basic networking program for sharing text in real time.
It was kind of like a precursor to forums, essentially.
It was a precursor to AIM, to Messenger, to text messaging. It was the first form of typing to people over a network in real time.
Yeah, and it still exists. There's still...
oh, sure, because there are some robust games out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I did some role-playing games on that way back in the day. So I guess that counts. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you think PC gaming, you think more of, actual games with their graphics and their interfaces and.
Well, I mean, depends on how far back you want to go. Yeah, you would be like MUDs, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of text-based games and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely, those are definitely like the granddaddies of PC gaming, really. So,
but mostly I was limited because we had limited internet use.
Mm-hmm.
It was primarily for my dad, who did voice work out of the house, so he would need all 56K of that modem.
Of course,
exclusively to him. Can't call the house. Can't really do anything online for a while. God, back in the day when we got 56K, I remember being excited just how fast that was.
It was
56K of data per second. My God, man, the possibilities.
Yeah, the first computer I owned that could get on the internet had a 14.4 baud rate modem, and it was absolutely slow as like it's almost like not having the internet at all, really.
You want that so 1 meg slow. Image?
It's so
make
slow.
A sandwich.
Yeah, pretty much. You want to download a game demo? You better come back like tomorrow, a week from now, maybe.
Heaven help you if the connection dies.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
but
yeah.
Between that and basically all my personal computers have been, absolute basic economy class. I need a word processor more than anything else. I haven't had a lot of access to PC gaming. Like the current rig I have right now, the laptop that is where all these Sonic scripts are born from, can't reliably run Undertale.
Right.
That's just how chuggalicious this thing is. So my PC gaming experience, Undertale, played that on PC first. But
right. Well, that streaming PC you have should be okay.
Right.
But
I don't quite have a nice enough setup to, actually use the mouse and keyboard.
That's okay. You can. That's the nice thing about PC gaming now is controllers that you can.
This is true.
You can use pretty much any controller you want with.
This is true. With some games, though, you need everything.
Sure. It just depends. So
maybe we should dust that off and give TF2 a shot again one day. I'm sorry. Anyway,
my experience with PC gaming, I guess, pretty much dates back to I don't know, when I was born. Not quite. Not quite. It's actually, I was about 9 years old when I got my. Well, no. Now that I think about it, I was thinking. I was about 9 years old when I got our first computer, but no, I probably would have been about 7 or 8 because there was actually a computer before the computer I'm thinking of as my first computer. So, for me, PC gaming, I feel like my track of PC gaming has been different for most people's. I know most people grew up playing people who played PC games played like strategy games, first-person shooters, and like point-and-click adventures. I never played any of those, really. Very rarely. Not for any reason other than just the fact that I was more into racing games. So I had a few racing games. And that's kind of what I grew up with for a while. So it didn't help that also my family wasn't exactly flush with cash when I was a kid. So I had a computer, but I didn't have many games for it. And I never got many games for it. So it's not like I was exposed to a ton of this stuff until much later in life. But the computer I started out with was like a Tandy 1000, which is an semi-IBM compatible, sort of runs on its own variant of DOS computer that doesn't play nice with, or didn't play nice with a lot of games. So the main thing I remember about that computer was one of the games it came with was Hangman. And I remember playing that. I remember playing that. So, yeah, with like a PC speaker noises every time you messed up. It was like, beep. Yeah, it's just silly. So, and of course it made like an ASCII person hanging because, it was the 90s. We liked people hanging. It was fun. It was exciting. And it was that era, where things were like, oh no, terrible. Anyway, my getting exposed to other games on the PC actually came in the form of one of my parents' friends. His name is Carl. He was big into PC gaming at the time, and he introduced me to some kind of... For this computer, it really couldn't handle much, so he kind of introduced me to some very simple games. Like, there was a game that's a little bit like... If you're familiar with a game like Super Off-Road or Danny Sullivan's Indie Heat or like top-down racing games like that, top-down single-screen racing games, it was just called Race. And that was essentially my first real, quote-unquote, computer game. And so I remember very distinctly playing that. It had... this was during the time where EGA graphics were very common. I believe it's called EGA. Might have been... No, not... I don't think it's CGA. I think EGA is where you have like cyan, magenta, and yellow, and black are the only colors you have. So I very distinctly remember driving a pink car around a pink and black track, with the other cars being like blue and yellow. So that was sort of my introduction to PC gaming. From there, I finally actually got a quote-unquote real PC. I guess it was sort of a mid-range Windows 95 computer.
Heck of an upgrade.
Yeah, like it was ran one of the first Pentiums, I believe. It was like a Pentium, might have been a Pentium 66. I can't remember if it was a 66 or a 90, but it was one of those. So it was an early Pentium. So I was finally able to actually play some proper DOS and Windows games. I remember very distinctly breaking it multiple times to try and figure out how it worked. That's what you have to do with PCs, though. That's how it goes. Sometimes you just have to break it and see if you can unbreak it. So yeah, that was interesting, especially because it was the family computer. So if I broke it, well, it was a problem. But once again, a family friend, Carl, came around and introduced me to two games specifically. The first NASCAR racing game from Papyrus. Of course, I was into racing as a kid, not just racing games, but also actual racing. So I quite enjoyed that. And it's just basically a realistic simulation, which is another thing that PCs specialized in, especially at the time.
Right.
Was more realistic racing simulators rather than just arcade style racers that you get on consoles. So, and I'd have a ton of fun with that, especially because you could like turn around and go backwards and just crash into everybody and make the entire field explode. So that was fun. And the other game I was introduced to was actually a game called Earthsiege, which was sort of a competitor to MechWarrior. So I was my first experiences on the PC were racing fast cars and stomping around in giant robots that kill each other. So I feel like I had a pretty good introduction to the PC.
I mean, really, what more do you need in life? Go fast, blow things up.
That's really all I need. Exactly. I'm a simple man with simple needs. That's all I want. So, but yeah, that was where I kind of broke into the PC gaming space, as it were. So, there's a lot of PC gaming classics that I have never played at all, which is really weird. Like, I'm trying to think of one. Like, Deus Ex, I've never played. It took me a while to play Doom, although I eventually did. Doom is a lot of fun. But, geez, I'm trying to think. What other ones I was exposed to? I don't know. What I did like, though, was that the computer I had actually did come with a bunch of games. Most of them were shareware, but that was sort of how I was exposed to the scrolling shooter genre, space shooter genre. And this was, I was exposed to it through the vertical scrolling shooter of Tyrion, which is still one of my favorite classic PC games. And also Jazz Jackrabbit, which is kind of a Western-style Sonic-esque game, except there's no loops, and the main character also has a gun, so he's like the precursor to Shadow the Hedgehog, really.
Beat me to the joke, dagnabbit.
Except he's not as cool. But you could say Dag Rabbit because he's a jackrabbit, you know. See, I'm funny. Why are you laughing at me?
You said you're funny.
Oh, okay, good.
You're making the joke I make with the ha-ha. It's how it works.
Okay, good. Anyway, so that's my experience with PC gaming. The first PC game I bought with my own money was a game called Super Carts, and I also ended up buying the Gravis gamepad, which was a little gamepad that was actually kind of difficult to get working, and I don't know if it worked with Super Carts, but Super Carts was like a go-kart racing game, but it was more of it was kind of an arcade-style depiction of a realistic go-kart racing, so it ended up kind of being like not like Super Mario Kart, which is what I was kind of hoping for. So it's not a bad game, though. At least it wasn't at the time. Nowadays, I don't know if it's aged gracefully or not. But and then from there, it was mainly just a continuing journey through more racing games. I spent probably the most time playing Monster Truck Madness 1 and 2. You'd think there wouldn't be much to get out of those games, and as they come out of the box, there's not much to them. There's a few tracks. They're fun for a little while, but there's not much to them. You're basically driving monster trucks around like circuit and rally courses. So it's not even like realistic to actual monster truck racing, but that's okay. But what I think really kind of blew my mind and opened things up for me was the realization that there was a huge community of people on the internet who made cars and tracks, or trucks and tracks, really, for this game. And it's still around. It still exists, Ian. I had to look it up. But like 25 years on, because this game came out in 1994. The first game came out, I believe, in 94, and then Monster Truck Madness 2 was 96. The community still exists, and that's freaking amazing. It's a lot smaller than it used to be, but the fact that it's still around is freaking great. And at some point, the source code for the game actually leaked, and so it's been like kind of somewhat properly-ish ported to modern systems, which is even better.
Cool.
Which is even better. So I'm very happy to see that Monster Truck Madness community is still alive and kicking. So that makes me very happy. So there were some super creative tracks made for that game too. Just some really off the wall stuff. There was at least a couple tracks that took place in a giant kitchen, or maybe it's more like your truck was shrunk down and you're just driving around a regular kitchen as a little toy truck.
Either way.
And it's very, very creative, especially at the time. It was one of those tracks that kind of pushed the limits of the game and of computers at the time, because I very distinctly remember like frame rates just tanking at certain points during while you're racing around there. So yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff like that. So I think racing games in general just really lend themselves to modding. So I think that's why a lot of modern PC racing games have embraced official mods more so, like, or official ways to mod the game, like official tools and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about gaming on the PC, is being able to do things that the game either wasn't normally meant to do, or things that it just expand the game and make it give it more life beyond just what you got from the start. And it was all free. That's one thing we don't have now so much anymore, is everything's like everything to expand a game is all DLC that you have to pay for. But these were people who were just tinkering around with the game, learning how it worked, and basically kind of teaching themselves how to make games in a way. by modifying existing games, and they released their work and shared it with the world and unleashed their creativity. And so I definitely appreciate that aspect of PC gaming for sure.
Another aspect that just kind of occurred to me is what we don't really have in console gaming, and I don't know of it really in PC gaming anymore, are fun cheat codes.
Yeah, right. We do not get like any of those ever for any game, really. It's very rare. It's very rare that we have cheat codes, which is a shame.
I mean, not just the cheat code themselves, but, the fact that it would be some kind of clever turn of phrase and...
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Start putting in things thinking, oh, this sounds clever to me. Does this get a result? And more often than not, no. But that one time you think of something that seems silly and it actually does something, you're like, oh, neat. I have this power now.
Yeah. Or, yeah, like cheat codes in like Doom and stuff like that. Those were like ubiquitous at the time. So, but... Yeah, I also like being able to mod the game to cheat is another thing that you could do on the PC.
Yeah.
So, but it was really interesting. That was how I found out about tweaking INI files and stuff like that. Going in and opening things up in a text editor and seeing what was in them was just interesting to me. Or learning how hex editors worked and going in and tinkering with stuff that way as well. It's just a lot of fun. I feel like you don't get so much of that on the console. You just kind of put in the game and play it. And for most people, that's fine. But if you're interested in sort of getting into the nitty gritty and sort of actually learning how these games are made and how they work, it can be really fascinating to get in there and tinker with them and just mess with the tools, whether they're official or unofficial. Which there's obviously a lot of unofficial mod tools for PC games. Tons of them. But also, it feels like PC gaming has definitely had a bit of a renaissance in the past decade and a half, really. Kinda. For a while there, PC gaming was kind of, for people who weren't in the PC gaming space, it was kind of declared dead in the early 2000s. Like late 90s, early 2000s, people were like, PC gaming's dead. It's like... It's too hard to get into it. There's too many driver issues. You have to upgrade your computer too often and all this stuff that kind of drove people away from it. Or these preconceived notions that people had that I think are definitely... There's some nuggets of truth to them, but I think overall it was way blown out of proportion. But with the advent of Steam... We can't talk about PC gaming without talking about Steam. Steam pretty much resuscitated the PC gaming industry when it came out. Well, not quite when it came out, but what people don't remember is that Steam was hot garbage when it first launched. It was terrible.
And depending on who you ask.
And, well, it might still be to some people, but it's a lot better than it used to be. Basically, it was the required DRM for Half-Life 2, and people hated it. They absolutely hated it. But then they started selling games, other games, that weren't just Valve's games. And then they started doing big old sales. And then people were like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. Yeah, I remember when Steam was green too. Yeah, definitely. It's pretty crazy that it used to be green. Now it's kind of like this dark bluish thing. But yeah, it used to be green, and it used to suck. But it took me a while to actually get into using Steam just because, I don't know, I didn't want to pay full price for Half-Life 2 because I hadn't even played the first game at the time. But eventually, I think the sales got too good for me to ignore, and Half-Life 2 was just like, I don't know, $5. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll pay $5 and I'll play Half-Life 2. And I'm glad I did because Half-Life 2 is freaking amazing.
Yep.
So
you don't even need to play the first one, really.
Not really, no. I found that out. It's like, oh, okay, I don't really need to play the first one. I have, but I've gone back to it. But I did play Half-Life 2 first. But yeah, fantastic game. And it was kind of a good way to sneak in this this DRM that ultimately became like the groundswell of what PC gaming is nowadays. It definitely made things a lot easier. It does not make them perfect. There are still a lot of games, and there's still some issues playing games through Steam. It's not 100% perfect, but it definitely made it a lot easier it made it more of a console-like experience where you could just kind of open it up, click a game, and then just play it and just go. It was that unifying factor that I think PCs had been missing up to that point. It was like a thing where people were tired of tinkering with drivers and messing around with things just to get things running. And you had issues where if a game had a patch, you may not have ever known it existed unless you went and looked it up on the publisher's website and stuff like that. So Steam sort of unified all this stuff and made it much easier to like keep the games updated with new patches, and made it a more console-like experience, even though I guess technically it would have predated consoles that had that experience, or it would have been kind of in tandem with them, because it wasn't 2005, 2006 and stuff like that is when we had the Xbox 360 and the PS3, which is sort of when the era of being able to patch games on the fly kind of began.
Yeah, but no, I think you're right in that Steam was that unifying presence that gave it that more console feel. The appeal of just want game, get, go, instead of install, make sure everything's in the right place, that your specs are all right, and blah, 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 blah. It's just, you want the thing, you get the thing.
Yeah, and configuration issues and stuff like that definitely, I think, drove people away from PC gaming with stuff in like the 90s, especially, where you're having to deal with like, where you can't just tell your computer, or you can't just tell a game that your computer has a sound card. You have to set it up specifically with like certain DMA numbers and stuff like that, where like if you have the configuration set incorrectly, your sound card just flat out won't work. Things like that, where it wasn't like super complicated. It was just another unnecessary hurdle,
right,
for playing games on the computer. So getting over that, I think, is what really helped to solidify Steam, which is a weird thing to say because Steam is not a solid, but whatever. But it really helped to kind of make Steam the place where people ended up going for PC gaming for a long time, until some competitors started showing up on the scene. But so that is kind of been my experience with PC gaming since then. As of now, I feel like the parity of PC gaming and console gaming has, like, the gap between the two has closed immensely. It used to be if you wanted like the cutting edge, everything, like the mind-blowingest graphics and the deepest sort of gameplay, the PC was the place to be. But nowadays there's so many ports back and forth between the two, and like the PC does not really have its own library for the most part at this point, which is one of the things that I think kind of hurts the overall experience, because you don't quite have the things that make PC gaming unique anymore so much, or that made PC gaming unique during its early heydays. But overall, I think it's better for gaming in general that we have all of this stuff on PC, where even like as consoles die and stuff, because inevitably they will, and games that were left exclusively on consoles, or games that were released on, like, say, the Xbox 360 and the PC, at some point the Xbox 360 versions might not be 100% playable, whether that be because Xbox 360s just start dying, because eventually they will, or like, I mean, I'm just using the Xbox 360 as an example. I'm not trying to say that they're all going to just die tomorrow, although some of them might.
Some of them have been dead out of the box.
Some of them were dead. Yeah, some of them were dead before you even could play them. But anyway, it's more like a PC gaming is also sort of a way to preserve games. So I appreciate that we're getting a lot more PC ports because it means that in the future there will at least be some way to play games in some fashion from the history of gaming. Because a lot of these consoles, 100 years from now, it may be extremely difficult to find a working system that's that old. But when they're on computer, you can at least hopefully get them going somehow, some way, somehow. So I think that is good for game preservation. That's sort of my overall thoughts on gaming on the PC. I still enjoy it. It's my main way of gaming still. Even though I do love consoles too. So I just like playing games. I don't really care how to play them, but I definitely do most enjoy playing them on PC. Nowadays, it's just so much easier. Like gaming PCs have gotten so cheap. Like playing games on a computer, you don't need the highest class hardware and a ridiculous amount of money invested into getting a good gaming rig going. You can spend about as much as you spend on a console. You may want to spend a little more, but the big thing about PC gaming now too is that it's so much cheaper. With all the sales and with all the different competing platforms that are all vying for your money at this point, not just Steam, you've got literally hundreds of thousands of games, and most of them are freaking dirt cheap. And you can build an enormous library of games that you'll never play. Kind of like I have. And you'll just be like, yeah, I've got enough games to last me for literally the rest of my existence. and I still won't get through them all. So it's pretty wild how far PC gaming has come from being declared dead, from being, well, I should say, from being sort of a niche hobby to getting a little bit bigger in the 90s, and then apparently dying, except not really, and then just surging in popularity since the mid 2000s. It's a pretty wild time. So I like PC gaming a lot, and I hope that if you haven't tried games on the PC, that you'll give them a shot. There's so many games, there's so many great games to play on the computer. And I'm not just talking about modern new games. There's like the whole history of gaming on the PC is just littered with classics, absolute like masterpieces that you never would have gotten on consoles anywhere at the time, especially when they came out. So, yeah, PC gaming is definitely, I would say, like the best way to experience a lot of games, a ton of games. So, and that's what I love about it. So at this point, you can just spend a couple $100 on a decent computer and put Steam and some other storefronts on it and play video games for the rest of your life on like super cheap. So you got anything else you want to add, or any questions you want to throw at me, Ian?
Not really. I mean, I'm remembering other games I played in the past, but that's more of a list of, I played the thing, not quite as introspective and adding to the discussion as yours.
Yeah, I know.
You're talking about the various aspects of PC gaming as a culture. I'm like, I did a thing too. That's nice, Ian. You just sit in the corner with your milk.
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering if you had like PC gaming questions in general, like especially now about PC gaming, or things you're wondering about, like how things are compared to how they used to be or whatever. I don't know.
I was, so far outside of the culture, and I was always paranoid that I never went under the hood and looked at the code or, dabbled.
Poked around on anything, yeah.
Yeah, it was, if anything went out of order, it was like, broke it, panic. And And, the only, like you said, there's so much cross-pollination between PC gaming and console gaming these days that there isn't a huge divide, that there isn't really anything that makes PC gaming unique. And I feel like the handful of genres that can only really be done on PC are so niche that you can't really rely on them to make the platform its own unique thing. Like, I'm thinking specifically RTSs and how StarCraft got freaking huge, and your MMOs where you need every single key for input and to toggle all the menus that you just can't do with a controller. But those are very specific for their crowds, whereas something like an RPG or any kind of vehicle sim, flight simulator, your shooter, your platformer, those can be on anything.
Right. Well, we've also gotten to a point where consoles are essentially glorified PCs. They're basically running PC-based hardware just in a fancy shell for modern, modern consoles.
It's the universal tech, so that the software you are buying should work across the framework, but...
Yeah, so it's just been interesting to kind of see how gaming consoles specifically have gone from being sort of bespoke hardware unto themselves that's just like designed by the manufacturers to being essentially just take that buy that stuff from AMD and just throw it in a box. That's what they do now. It's all AMD based. Both the Xbox, well, I should say the Xbox One and the PS4 are AMD based. They run older AMD based graphics and CPUs that are based on last generation AMD processor stuff. And the Switch is running on NVIDIA's, basically the same thing as the NVIDIA Shield. The Switch is a glorified NVIDIA Shield with Nintendo's name on it. Which is fine. I'm not dogging it for that or anything. It's absolutely fine, and I actually really like that sort of. It's not innovation is the word I'm looking for. It's like the thinking outside the box of just in terms of what a console can be and sort of how to build one. It's like, well, yeah, the hardware. I think the hardware is less important than the software, and I think that's where people kind of get. People end up getting kind of crossed up when they're talking about like console wars. It's like, well, we can talk about the hardware all day, but does it really matter if the games aren't any good?
It's like buying a muscle car and driving it around downtown. It's
right. Yeah, it's not really worth doing.
You drop $1 million on a Ferrari, you can't get it to the Autobahn there, genius.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not that I'm speaking of post-road rage here, Toronto. No, not at all. I'm just saying that why is it that everyone that owns a BMW is a jerk?
Yeah, it's a big problem. Audis, too. Anyway. Yeah, that's really it on my thoughts on PC gaming. I've always enjoyed it. And the other good thing about gaming on a PC, too, is you have a PC, which means you're not just stuck playing games. You can actually do other stuff with it, too. Like right now, I'm using the same PC I play games on to record this freaking show. I can do other stuff, too. I can write. I can look stuff up on the internet. I can do all sorts of stuff. I have like the world at my fingertips through the internet. And I can go freaking play some Super Mario Brothers if I want. It's fine. So, yeah, that's the great thing about PC gaming that I really enjoy. And at this point, things have gotten so Steam has gotten to a point where it's so it's so easy to just even be able to like hook up to a computer, build a computer in a very small form factor. Because nowadays you can cram PCs into like friggin' tiny boxes that are console sized, stick them under your TV, hook it up, use Steam in big picture mode, which is basically just a TV mode, a 10-foot mode where you can use it across the room, and there you go. You're done. You've got a great freaking gaming PC in a console-sized form factor with a console type front end that basically just usually kind of mostly just works. So that's another one of the really cool things about PC gaming is it's so versatile and there's so much more you can do with a PC than just game on it. So that's another thing I like about it. But I think that is all my thoughts now on it. I think I've established most of my thoughts. Anyway, if any of you guys listening out there have any thoughts you want to add or any questions about PC gaming, let me know. I've been doing this stuff for a long freaking time. Sure, I missed most of the classic masterpieces of PC gaming. I've circled back to play a few of them, but it's definitely something that is like I have a big blind spot for things like strategy games and stuff like that. City builders, I'm actually fairly well versed in. I spent a lot of time playing. I've spent a lot of time playing SimCity, so, and I guess now we've gotten to a point where even games that would serve that the PC serves best, like strategy games and MMOs, as you mentioned earlier, and city builders, we've gotten to a point now where consoles can do those like just as well because they have touchscreen interfaces. Like the Switch has there's a game on it called City Skylines, which is basically a SimCity type game, as a really good SimCity type game that is very playable on the Switch because it has a touchscreen, and that would help. That also helps for like strategy style games, but MMOs, even like you can design an MMO around a console. Like DC Universe Online kind of did it and stuff like that. So it's not unplayable. It's not like they're unplayable on controllers. So it's neat, just kind of how all this stuff is kind of coalesced into just one big smorgasbord of gaming, rather than just each console has its own. Rather than just each platform having its own things, they've all kind of been brought together, and I think that does make it a little homogenous, but it also helps expose a lot of people to games they otherwise would have never played, which is also a great thing. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. I've talked enough about this, so let's go ahead and move on into the Q&A.
Before that, something I forgot to bring up earlier on. I don't know if you want to patch this in later, but did you see the news concerning Terry Bogart's addition to Smash and all the music that's going to come with him?
I do not. I am not aware of this. Please tell me more.
So there was today's Nintendo Direct was all about the Terry Bogard, his play style, his stage, and all that, all the cameos and whatnot. And they said that they had a very difficult time choosing music tracks because Terry's theme is mostly big band stuff, and they wanted more variety.
Sure.
So they started to look at all the SNK musical library as a kind of tribute.
Oh, boy.
They narrowed it down to 50 tracks and said, oh, God, we can't pick.
50?
That's what and so they sent that list off to SNK, hoping to, have that trimmed. SNK said, no, that's okay.
This is why I love SNK. I freaking love SNK.
So Terry Bogard is going to come with 50 SNK tracks.
I freaking love it. That is fantastic.
Some of them are new arrangements, but yeah, 50 freaking tracks.
That's fine.
With Terry and his stage. And being that you are a video game music aficionado, I should say, I figured that'd be right up your alley.
That is absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. Is it just from SNK, like SNK's whole oeuvre, or is it mainly focusing on like Fatal Fury and fighting game stuff?
I believe it's from I believe the focus is on mostly the fighting series, but I'm pretty sure it's from pretty much the SNK library. So there might be a little bit of this and that throughout. I'm not very familiar with the SNK lineage, so
I'm seeing here that there is some Metal Slug stuff in there. Oh yes, I love me some Metal Slug. Oh man, that's fan-freaking-tastic. That's amazing. I love it. I really love the way the Smash series treats the music. It's one of the best in terms of like paying tribute to video game music in general. It's absolutely astounding, and I love it.
At this point, it's less of a fighting game, and it's more of a museum of the entire genre.
That's really what it is. That's really what Smash has become, is just a giant tribute to video games. It's great. I love it. That's awesome.
And we've got another 11 characters to go. Good Lord.
Oh, man. We're running out of like big ones, I think. I feel like, maybe. Man. That's awesome news. I love that. I'm going to go look up all the songs in that after we're done here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Q&A.
If you want to have your question answered on the show, email us at BumbleKast@yahoo.com, tweet to us at BumbleKast, comment on any of the YouTube videos. If you're a patron, comment anywhere on the Patreon page or over on the Discord server for the Q&A specific channel.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the priority Q&A this week. We are going to be starting out with Andrew D. Are there limitations to original characters and magical items that you can create? For example, are you allowed to make your own robotic Sonic, your own primordial being like Dark Gaia, or your own set of gems? As for the Warp Topaz, were there restrictions on what you could and couldn't do with it?
There aren't any hard and fast rules. Sega prefers we stick within a certain range of species. They're not wild about bug characters or like extremely large mammals, like say elephants.
You made a beetle.
We did. Jewel was kind of a special case. One of the diamond cutters was supposed to be a bug, and that got shot down. And it's like, but we got Jewel, and it's like, yeah, you got Jewel. It's like, okay, understood. Moving on. But the series is so very, very young, it's really hard to say what is and isn't on the table. You know, the Metal Virus saga has been running for a year now and will continue to run for a little bit. So there really isn't an opportunity to say, hey, can we do our Eldritch Horror from the Core of the Earth storyline or anything? Now, I have lots of ideas, but you know, you don't pitch them until you're done with what you've got.
Sure.
The Warp Topaz was something that I went in conservatively with because I didn't know how much latitude I would get. And not to put too fine a point on it, but I was surprised just how receptive Sega was to it. And again, I don't know how much more I can say on the topic, but they were very cool with the idea. But in terms of just introducing additional elements, they seem to be fairly open. Part of it, I think, is because we go into it with the mindset of, you know, we're designing these things to fit within Sonic's universe. We're not trying to create something for the sake of creation or, you know, Trojan horse an idea into the book where it doesn't belong. You're creating stuff for Sonic, so it should fit Sonic. I kind of along that line. I didn't know if they would be cool with the variable Wispon, you know, to have such a weird take on a very new concept, but they were incredibly receptive to it and had some neat ideas of their own. When the Diamond Cutters have their own unique Wispons using wisps and weapon types that were not in the game, I didn't know if that would get accepted, and yeah, no problem there. So I don't know. It's a case-by-case basis, and we'll just have to see as we go forward.
Next one comes from EggmanInc. Did Ian ever have any plans involving the content from Sonic Colors? Was it ever brainstormed? Also, how did Egg Boss Maw's power work? What was the plan for that?
I'm pretty sure we covered Maw on a recent episode.
Okay, we might have actually.
I think it was last episode.
Oh, did we? Okay, I might have overlooked that.
I'm
Threw that in here from the same question. But anyway, Sonic Colors then. What about Sonic Colors?
Sonic Colors, I would like to get into it. I'm especially intrigued with Mother Wisp and how such an important part of the Wisp society, life cycle, whatever, was relegated to the 3DS version of the game instead of the main game. Like in the 3DS version, she gets corrupted like the other Wisps, and that's the supersonic fight, is you have to purify Mother Wisp.
Huh.
And in mainline colors, not only do you not have the actual supersonic fight, but Mother Wisp is not referenced at all. And I'm assuming that she is considered, I don't know, part of the mainline canon, given that she showed up in Team Sonic Racing and that she was a buddy unit in Sonic Runners for a time. So, I don't know, I'd like to play around with the Wisp world a bit, but it's not top priority, I'd say.
All right, next question comes from Ian Waffles. Ian, how do you keep yourself personally invested in the Sonic the Hedgehog series when it's been your job for the past decade? I often take breaks from being in the Sonic series or any series I like and come back periodically. You haven't had that luxury, so I wondered how you could keep balance of being a fan of the series and working for the series.
Good question.
That is. I like that one.
I think part of it is that there is still material coming out for Sonic. Mm-hmm. So when there is a new game or if they do another cartoon at some point, or if there's any other media outside of the comic that I'm not involved in, that's something as a fan can consume and enjoy. And then it injects something new into how I can look at the book. It's like, okay, what has this new media introduced and how can I utilize it? And part of it too is just the very nature of the work is fun. You know, I get to take something that I've loved for years and play around with it and produce something with it in a creative way. And that, I mean, I will say that it's very different than when I first started out. I am no longer the starry-eyed fanboy who's like, oh, I could do this with a property. It's like, yeah, okay, I understand the rules. I understand the limitations. You know, here's the business side of it. Here's the fandom side of it. You know, there's a lot of factors that have made it less magical, I guess. But when you get down to it, when you step back and look at it, it's like, I get to write Sonic. And that's a gift in and of itself. I think that perspective helps keep it fresh, maybe.
Right.
And it's not like everything I do is Sonic related. There's Dragoon. There's a million other original projects that have died on the vine or are in some form of pre-production that I can work with. BumbleKast Gaming, BumbleQuest, which we'll get back to at some point. And all the other clients I have had over the years and those that I have coming up, those are all other things that, you know, take my attention and, you know, allow me to not think about Sonic for 5 minutes. I always come back to it because I really enjoy it, but I think it's kind of a mix of I'm rambling. To get to the point, it's a mix of the fact that there is new media fairly constantly coming out that I have a unique perspective given my position, and that I have other things going on so that it isn't just Sonic every day, 24/7.
Yeah, you have you've diversified a bit. So that's good. I mean, that's always a good way to keep things fresh. You can put things aside and then work on something else and then come back to it. So I'm sure, like...
I mean, don't get me wrong. If Sega says, hey, Ian, we want you to write all the Sonic, I will write all the Sonic. Give it to me. I know no limits. I am a glutton for the Hedgehog. No.
Yeah, but you also had, like, Mega Man to keep you going for a little while, too. So you could switch back and forth. You had two blue heroes to focus on for a little while there. So
all I need to do now is write Shovel Knight, and I'm set.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep. I really should do that. Why is there not a Shovel Knight comic? It'd be perfect. It'd be absolutely perfect for a comic.
Who knows? I don't know.
Let's get Yacht Club on the horn.
Yacht Club, contact me. I love you.
Let's get Yacht Club on the horn. Yacht Club, come on. Let's do a comic. Anyway, next question comes from Blue Title Gamer. My question for this episode involves the recent issue of IDW Sonic, issue 22. A real soul crusher of an issue. I loved it. So when the monkey civilian revealed that he was infected and thus started the chaos, I wonder how he got in if Gemerl is the one scanning people for signs of infection. Is this something that might get addressed in the future, or shall it remain a mystery?
Answer is twofold. Number one, Gemerl was not scanning people coming in. It was assumed that they were safe because they were being brought back. He didn't start scanning until the Restoration HQ started to fall, and you absolutely had to make sure that those who were getting through were okay. And number two, Gimmerl was distracted because Vector and Espio came back with Zombot and Charmy, so he wasn't paying attention to the masses that were being shoved in one after another. So if Gamrel had been scanning and had managed to find that one person out of the excessively large crowd, he would have been distracted anyway. It's just one of those scenarios where things should have gone better, but because of just natural human error, they did not. And that's what kind of gives this arc that tension, I guess, is because these characters who are usually so flawless and on the ball without anything going wrong are actually caught up in a moment where they aren't, mental train derailed. There were no survivors.
Where they aren't like the perfect mascot characters, where things like their actions are actually having consequences, things like that.
Yeah, where they make mistakes that are understandable.
Right.
It's just that you have no room for error. So any small mistake becomes a very big problem very fast.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that. I think that's a good way to sort of ride around the idea that these characters' growth is kind of limited for at least for the official characters.
When the licensor says characters have to be a certain way, you have to perform some real mental gymnastics sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I understand that. All right. With that, it's time to jump over into the standard Q&A. First up, we got one from B Crossfire. If the Mega Man comic had gotten all the way to the Mega Man 6 arc, do you think you would have expanded on the first annual robot tournament? Like by adding a ton of new robot masters, maybe covering the tournament battles proper in a miniseries?
Oh,
that would have been a lot of fun.
I like the way you think, B Crossfire.
That has a ton of potential for, it would be awesome.
The answer is yes and no, because this is wild speculation. I don't think we would have gotten any kind of auxiliary miniseries at that point. It would have been great, but given how Mega Man was doing at the time, I don't think we could have justified it, so probably not. And it would have been stuck in the 4-issue for trade format, so that would be a factor. Just for simplicity's sake, let's say it would be an 8-issue arc, just to keep things simple. I would definitely want to put in cameos of other robot masters, both those that would logically come from other games and originals, just to give you a sense of the larger world. You can guarantee the Quake Woman or Vesper Woman would have been in there somewhere.
Of course.
But we probably wouldn't have been able to have room to go through the whole tournament simply because there just wouldn't have been enough room. And as fun as it is, if this was more like a shonen manga thing, having that, full tournament exposure works a little better, but in the Western style comic, it would just kind of plod. So I would pay lip service. Absolutely. I would try to show as much as possible, but for the interest of the narrative and, moving things forward, we probably wouldn't be able to get into all of the nitty gritty of the tournament, even though, oh man, would I want to.
Oh man. Yeah. There's a lot of potential there. But you don't want to play. You don't want to write the Mega Man 6 version of Bloodsport. just a tournament the whole time. Just a whole tournament. That's all it is. Just a fighting tournament. Nothing else. That's all you need. I freaking love Bloodsport. It's a great movie. Bloodsport is like a video game movie before video games made that style of game, which is awesome. So, go look up Bloodsport if you've never watched it. It's great. It definitely is a big inspiration for the tournament fighting game. It's awesome. So, I feel like it could have been like the Mega Man's version of the Champions arc from Archie Sonic. So I would have probably really enjoyed it.
It'd be something along those lines.
Right. Yeah. I would have definitely enjoyed that too. Because I freaking love Champions still. Still my favorite Archie Sonic from the main series arc, for sure. All right, next question comes from Okami. Oh, hiya, Ian. I had a question regarding my 2 favorite IDW original characters from the Sonic comics, Rough and Tumble. Do you think you may ever get around to exploring their backstory in the future, answering questions like how Tumble's tail got detached? Why did they become evil mercenaries by the time Forces occurred? And who exactly is the oldest of the 2? And a possible miniseries starring them, like with Tangle and Whisper? Thanks a bunch for your time.
Okami, thank you for liking Rough and Tumble. They have not had quite the same reception as Starline or Tangle or Whisper. Not to say that they've been cast aside by the fandom overall, but they haven't been as embraced. So I don't foresee them getting a miniseries to themselves anytime soon. And that's okay because they weren't meant to be big show-stopping characters. They were meant to be the mooks that cause trouble in between major story beats.
Right.
And for that much, I think they do their job well. We will be seeing them again. I promise you that. And I would like to get into more of who they are and who they were. But because they are functionally the Rocksteady and Bebop of the comic, they aren't meant to be major players. I don't know if we'll get to that anytime soon. But I do want to get into why Tumble doesn't have a tail and just what the dynamic is between the 2 of them as family or otherwise. So, hold true. I'm glad they have a fan in you, and I do want to get more into them. I just don't see it happening soon.
All right, next question comes from Liam B. Comic books seem to be more susceptible to the demands and necessities of business more than any other artistic medium. Why do you think that is?
I don't know if that's true. I would argue that television and big budget cinema are far, far more ruled by the business aspect than comics. I think
it's a lot more of it's just visible for comics.
Right. Comics as an industry is much smaller and much more intimate, I suppose.
Right.
The team that's required to put together a monthly comic like Sonic is vastly smaller than television or movies, and we are much more open about the process.
Sure.
In part because I think it is, like I said, a more intimate design process, and also because while there are certainly the politics within the industry, it is not nearly as massive or Machiavellian as Hollywood. Like, I would love to branch out into other mediums. I do not want to even touch Hollywood. The stories that you hear and the egos and just the nonsense that goes on, I have no patience for. So there's definitely, I'm not saying that you're wrong. There is definitely a aspect of business that comes into play because the comic industry is so small. There is a lot more concern, I guess, over revenue versus investment. But then again, the budgets for television movies are so large, it's probably the same deal when you get down to it. I just think it's a matter of the creators are much more open with the fan base over the process and all the machinations that come with it.
Right.
That, and specifically with Sonic, it's it is a comic where you have both the publisher and the licensor involved. So that's 2 aspects of business versus, say, any of the mainline Marvel stuff, which should be answering just to Marvel. I mean, I don't know how much Disney has a direct say in the editorial process. That would be interesting to find out. But again, and there's your example right there, is we don't see as much of that because Disney is so much larger than, Sega would be in terms of presence. So I wouldn't say it's more, but it definitely is an aspect of it.
Right. And you can say the same thing for like Warner Brothers and DC as well. So
right,
not just Marvel, but it's like you don't really get a view of the internal machinations of these huge Hollywood studios and stuff like that. The comics is definitely a more intimate business. Not an actually intimate business. That's something else entirely. But but it is interesting because it seems like they're more susceptible to it, but it's just because we see more of it. So it seems just more outright visible. The things that happen in the comics community and the companies that are responsible for producing comics, they tend to be a little bit more open and forthright. Not always, but they tend to be. All right, we got one last question.
And it's for you.
Uh-oh.
TBF asks Kyle, which is your favorite video game franchise and platform, and why?
Well, I got a spoiler alert for you. If you've listened to this far into the episode and you actually listened to the main topic discussion, you didn't just skip to the Q&A. My favorite gaming platform is, in fact, the PC. If it seems like maybe it's kind of cheating to say that, I don't know, but it really is. But if we were to go console, oh man, that's tough. That's really tough if we're talking consoles, because I don't know. I have a big soft spot for retro consoles though, pre-2000s. I've always had a soft spot for those. Probably because that's when I grew up mainly, but like the NES, I adore the NES. I love the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. I do have an appreciation for the Master System, even though I have a lot less experience with it. I don't know. I like the PlayStation. The N64 was also a really great time. The Dreamcast. The Dreamcast is up there for me, for sure. So I'd say, like...
I was waiting for it.
I was going to say, like, the Dreamcast, the NES, the Super Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis are, like, neck and neck for me. But, man, if I had to choose one, if I had to choose between the Genesis and the SNES, that's really tough. But I'd probably go with the Genesis. Like, if I were on, like, a desert island and I had to choose... Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, I'd be like, oh man, I'd have to go with the Genesis. Just, I don't know. I can't go without Sonic for a little while, so I need to play my Sonic. As far as favorite video game franchise goes, again, I have a lot. Geez, like Daytona USA is probably one that's up there. I mean, Sonic and Mario are like the obvious choices. I think what other franchises I enjoy, like just racing games in general, really. Like I absolutely adore the Burnout series. I don't know. That's tough. What about for you, Ian?
I didn't think about this one. It was a you question. I don't know. Of what I have right now, I feel like I'm getting the most usage out of my Switch.
Yeah, the Switch is really good. Switch is doing really fantastic. So, yeah, if I were to choose like a modern platform, I think I'd go with the Switch. Yeah.
As much as I loved the Dreamcast and saved up my pennies to buy my very own, the system that I feel like my family got the most mileage out of was the N64.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have to give a shout out to the Nomad, power-sucking brick that it is, because long after our Genesis went somewhere, we still had the Nomad kicking around, and my youngest brother was able to play through my Genesis library with it. So there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely, yeah. The Nomad is like the precursor to the Switch, really. Sega did it first.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't do it better because obviously they couldn't at the time because the technology was limited, but they did it first.
I mean, yeah, folks were big on some of the technical innovations that Sega did because they were dead ends, but Sega was experimenting in ways other systems were not.
Yeah.
So, but that's a whole other topic I think we've touched on before.
Yeah.
Franchises, what I think it should come as no surprise. I mean, you're here listening to this show with me. It's Skies of Arcadia.
Oh, yeah, of course. Franchise, of one game. It's fine.
Quiet you, there's two. I'm counting the re-release as a second.
Okay, good. You might as well count Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform, too. Why not?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, all right. So
the unreleased PC port. There we go. That's four titles.
That's four games for you. I forgot about Mega Man, by the way, in my favorite video game franchises. Yeah, Mega Man is a big one for me. Big influence, lots of inspiration from Mega Man for me, as I'm sure you can attest to, Ian. So, yeah. Also, got to show my love for Mega Man. Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight's also shaping up to be like a freaking amazing franchise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, definitely. As far as modern franchises go, Shovel Knight is like, man, it's so good. It's so good. All right, that's it.
All right, before we wrap up the show, we're going to give a big thank you to all the folks who make this show possible with your continued patronage. Normally, I do this in the one breath type of thing, but my lung capacity is shot. So, big thank you to Daniel H., Eric F., Connell T., Alex P., EggmanInc., Justin S., Ian Waffles, Andrew D., Blue Title Gamer, Koopling Crew 128, Saturn Flicky, Chris A., John B., Jennifer R., Revan the Light, Lisa M., Frederick, Spider Dreamer, Scruffy Matt, PC the Unicorn, Do Is This Din, Dave M, Mike B, Samuel P, Sam Cybercat, Degama F Wow, Brody M, Neil H, Justin G, Dan MS, Silly String, Takaro, Lee HK, Chevelle Don B, Sin Prince, John M, James K, Adam BT, and Overthinking Films.
We have some new names in there. We've gotten a couple of patrons recently. Thank you guys for joining in. And, of course, big thanks to everyone who's been here for however long you've been here.
Absolutely. Kyle, after the show, where can folks find you?
You can head on over to the KNGI network at kngi.org, where you can find archived episodes of the BumbleKast in MP3 format, downloadable for any of your listening pleasure on any device you own. You can also check out my other show, Nitro Game Injection, which streams live on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, also over at kngi.org. You can find all of the information to stream it there. And you can also find me on Twitter at KyleJCRB. Ian?
Find me on Twitter at IanFlynnBKC, or go over to BumbleKing.com. That has my release schedule of upcoming work and links to my full portfolio, FAQs on Sonic and all sorts of stuff. And also check out my own original webcomic series, Drogoon. That's DROGUNE.com. Updates every Friday.
Don't forget, you can also head on over to Twitter and follow this show at BumbleKast. BumbleKast at yahoo.com. You can send emails, your comments, questions, and all sorts of other stuff, whatever you want to send there. It's fine. And you can also listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. And also you can find it on YouTube and also on kngi.org and other places, many other places.
You can further support us and the show by heading over to the Bumble store. Get yourself some Bumble swag. That's shop.spreadshirt.com/BumbleStore.
Don't forget, you can also check out the BumbleKast Gaming live streams on Twitch at twitch.tv/BumbleKastGaming, Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as various other times throughout the week whenever either one of us gets a wild hair and gets a chance to actually stream something. Keep an eye out on Twitter for announcements, and you can also follow and subscribe or whatever you do over on Twitch. I'm still learning the lingo, so I think subscriptions on Twitch are actually like payments. They actually like are people giving you money, and it's very strange. It's like I'm used to YouTube. I'm used to YouTube terminology, so I'm getting used to Twitch's terminology, but. So go ahead.
That, and since YouTube demonetized us, there's no reason to worry about the money on that end.
Absolutely not. Yeah. We need 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't clicked that subscribe button down there, you might want to go do that. Also,
click the button, ring the bell, do a little dance, get down tonight.
Yes. Also, click the like or dislike button, whichever one. It doesn't matter. They both do the same thing to the algorithm. I'm not joking, by the way. If you downvote something, if the downvote, like the crazy downvoting of stuff, it just makes it more visible. That's all it does. You guys are just making it worse.
Hey, look at this cool thing everything likes. Hey, look at this train wreck everyone hates.
Yeah, pretty much. That's YouTube. That's YouTube for you. It's just like, hey, it's all the same to YouTube's algorithm. It's all the same. So, yeah, just hit those buttons and do those things down there in the comments and under the video and stuff if you're watching this on YouTube. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning into this episode of the BumbleKast.
We'll catch you in a couple weeks for the next episode. We're going to talk about things and stuff.
What?
Have a good night, everybody.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
How could we talk about things and stuff?
Well, you like things and I do stuff, so we can do an episode about things and stuff.
I'm not so sure we can, actually. I don't know. I've done the research. The international treaties are fine. This is throwing everything off for me, Ian. I didn't know we could even do things or stuff.
All right, fine. If it's going to be that much of a problem, you talk about the stuff and I'll talk about the things.
All right. And meanwhile, Discord will turn you into a robot that's almost unlistenable. So have fun with that.
I've devolved into my 56K self.
Okay, that's what's going on. You and your slow internet. Is this what happens because you're up in an igloo in the middle of Canadian tundra? Is this how it works? Is this the problem? Maybe that's what it is. You're out in the middle of the Canadian wilds in the middle of nowhere. That's how it works. You're chilling with the polar bears and the penguins because, of course, Canada has both.
Look, it's tricky getting the signal off the Aurora Borealis, but when it works, it's great.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of have to, because your house is made of ice, you sort of have to reflect off of it. You bounce the signals off of it. And so that kind of makes things a little shaky, but eventually it will work.
Yeah. Now, if you excuse me, I need to go ice fishing with my teeth.
Okay, have fun with that.
Let's get this over with. We're so happy to have you here, folks.
We It's funny. You think we'd hate recording this show. We like recording this show. It's fun. I get to talk to Ian, but man, sometimes we're just like, You've been listening to the BumbleKast, a co-production of Bumble King Comics and the KNGI Network. Original theme music composed by Ken Coda Snyder. Remixed intro by T-Lopes. Find out more information, along with podcast feeder links, MP3 downloads, and more at bumbleking.com and kngi.org. And I almost said, and I should have. I didn't say it because you said you were going to go ice fishing with your teeth, and I was going to say, okay, boomer. Because, it's rotor. Because rotor's overall wrists, and that's the joke. That's the joke. I'm explaining the joke. It's not funny anymore, is it?
I get it. It's all good.
Okay.